Okay, guys, I just had one of those things. You know, one of those things, the pictures in your head that move. What are those things called? An idea. Yeah, thank you, Mark, an idea. Okay, I had an idea, right? And this idea blew me away, seriously, like to the back of the wall, all right? This idea led me down a hallway to a door that led to a stairwell that spiraled down to a trapdoor that led me to a vortex to a parallel dimension. That's totally not overhyping this theory at all, okay? But it is interesting, okay? And it is something I just kind of realized. Now, this idea, this theory, kind of comes in multi-stages. It's a multi-stage theory, okay? Stage one of this is pretty basic information. It's just basic knowledge that you would understand if you ever watched One Piece, okay? So let's just start there just so we're on the same page, okay? So, Tony Chopper, here he is cosplaying as Trafalgar Law, but Tony Chopper, in all of his reindeer slash human brilliance, created a drug known as the Rumble Ball, which are essentially jawbreakers that allow him to modify the wavelength of his devil fruit. By the way, that is the closest thing we have ever gotten to an explanation, whether it be a chemical, medical, or biological explanation on what these freaking things actually do to him. It's like, yeah, I just eat these jawbreaker drugs I invented and I can modify the wavelength of my human fruit. Like, alright, well, we'll just put that explanation, not really much of an explanation, we'll just put that over here for now, okay? And so, upon consuming one of these Rumble Balls, Chopper is given more transformations than the standard 3 for a Zoan user, okay? And he has a bunch of different of these. We've talked about these in other videos. This is not a video talking about Chopper's different forms. I already did that in the human fruit discussion video. Spoiler alert, the human fruit looks like a mushroom, so there you go. But yeah, we talked about that. Chopper has a bunch of different forms pre-time skip, and then he swaps some out, you know, post-time skip. He swaps out jump point for kung fu point. He has control over monster point and all that stuff post-time skip. We all understand that, okay? It's not what we're really here to talk about today, but that's stage one. That's just basic knowledge. Chopper invented the Rumble Ball. Okay, so now we're moving up to stage two. And this is something also a lot of people, I've received a lot of comments about this. This was kind of the impetus for this video, okay? It doesn't really take a genius to start figuring out, wait a second, whoa, hold on now. These are not something that Chopper invented just necessarily for himself. I mean, he invented them so he could use them, but in theory, these could also work on other Devil Fruit users, other Zoan users. So there's stage two. What happens if another Zoan user, aside from Chopper, ate a Rumble Ball? Would they be given the same effects? So for example, Dalton, who is in fact actually, also fun fact, the first Zoan user ever revealed in the story, and also lives in the Sakura Kingdom on Drum Island. What would happen if Chopper, you know, one day walked down to Bighorn or one of the towns on Drum Island and he was like, hey Dalton, check it out. I made these cool little Rumble Ball jawbreakers. They're really cool. Do you want some? They're cotton candy flavored. They actually are. I bought these like 3 years ago when I did the Chopper video, and they've just been sitting in a mason jar in my studio for like a long time, and so, but yeah, they're actually cotton candy flavored. I would not recommend eating one, but, you know, they're there. But what would happen, for instance, if Dalton ate 3 of these? If Dalton just took a big handful of these things, he's like, oh, thank you, Chopper, so much. I love candy just as much as I love my exact favorite food, which is, in fact, down at the cafe, and I order a burger and a small order of fries every single Wednesday at 12 o'clock, because Dalton is a very specific individual. He just gives you a bunch of random information about his life. I go to bed at exactly 10:45 every night. That's the kind of guy Dalton is. But let's say Dalton just reached in, grabbed 3 of these, and just like, thank you, Chopper. Gulp. Would we immediately then have Monster Point Dalton? Monster Point, giant bison man, just horns come spiraling out, and he starts rampaging through freaking Bighorn. Think about all the different variations we could have on that, because Chopper explained, and this is one of the first things that actually happened, shortly after Chopper developed the Rumble Ball, he tried, you know, what would happen if I ate more than one. And he figured out that if he ate 2 of them, the transformations become a little bit more difficult for him to maintain, or for him to choose which ones he goes into. They're a little bit more unstable. And when he took 3, he just blacked out altogether, and then he went into Monster Point and he destroyed an entire village on Drum Island before they calmed him down and he was knocked unconscious, okay? That happens no matter who you are. Like, he didn't have training prior to that, so by that logic, if these things work on every other Zoan user the same way they work on Chopper, then you could feed these to Kaku and have Monster Point Giraffe mode. You could feed these to, I'm trying to think of, like, Pell. We could have Monster Falcon Pell. I mean, come on, that might actually explain how he survived the nuke. That might actually, I think I finally cracked the case. I don't think Chopper met Pell beforehand, but Chopper, you know, sensed fellow Zone users in need, and before Pell, he grabbed the bomb and he flew into the sky, and Chopper was like, here, Usopp, take my rumble balls, fire 3 of them into that giant falcon's mouth, that heroic falcon's mouth, and Usopp's like, why? And he's like, just do it! He's gonna need it! I'm like, okay! And then Pell's flying in the air, and he's like, I am the guardian deity of Alabasta. I will save the... What the hell? He turns into a giant monster falcon, and then the nuke detonates like boom, boom, boom. And then Pell flies out of the ground, but it gave him enough endurance and defenses to survive it. Turned his feathers into damn blast shields. Yes! So by that logic, though, in theory, we've never seen it in the story. Don't know if Oda's ever gonna go there, but... in theory, that would work. The only way I would explain that away that it couldn't is Chopper, when he made these things, specifically did, like, only design them so they would work on him. Like, he used part of his own DNA or something with the Rumble Balls, so they would only be applicable to either his particular body or his particular fruit in some way. But I don't think that's what happened. Now, in the anime, we do get a filler episode actually right after Alabasta. It's a really adorable filler episode that actually features Robin and Chopper bonding, and that's so cute. But it's a filler episode that shows how Chopper invented the Rumble Ball. Now, once again, it's a filler episode, and it doesn't go into great detail on Chopper, like, you know, what chemical combination, like, what elements did he use, like, what process, you know, he doesn't go into great detail. It just shows a little story of how he created the Rumble Ball, and it was kind of used for laughs, like, oh, he eats a Rumble Ball, and poof, he turns into freaking guard point, and he's bouncing around the room, it's like, oh, that's so funny, little Chopper just playing around in a chemical laboratory, you know what I mean? You know, but that's all filler, that's all anime only. We still don't know the whole story behind how he made these things, but I'm going to assume he didn't do anything particular for himself. I'm assuming these things would work on any Devil Fruit user, right? It's just that Chopper's the only one that knows how to make them, and, you know, it's not like he's just going to be passing these out to people, you know, it's like his own personal stash of these things, right? But anyway, so that's stage 2, though. Then you go higher up to stage 3, and then you start thinking, like, okay, why stop at Zone users? Because so far, we've only seen these things used on Zone users, but what would happen if this wavelength was disturbed or modified for Paramecia or Logia users? All right, now I have no basis for that because that's never been shown. What would happen if Luffy ate one of these things by accident? It's Luffy. It might have actually happened at some point. Like, remember when they were in the Hot Sea, when the Straw Hats, when we had Luffy, Nami, Brook, Chopper, Carrot, Pedro were there, and they were all going to Totland to rescue Sanji, and there was no food because, you know, Luffy had eaten all the food. I wouldn't be surprised if, you know, before they, you know, caught the poison fish and Luffy almost died if it wasn't for Reiju, you know. I wouldn't be surprised if before that, you know, Luffy was like, hey, Chopper, don't you have those candy ball things, those jawbreakers? And he's like, you mean my Rumble Balls? I can't give you those. I need those for fighting. It's like, yeah, but just give me some. You know, I would be surprised if Luffy would have gotten into Chopper's private stash and then eaten some of those and like, whoa, I've never actually experimented on what would happen if another type of Devil Fruit user ate those aside from a Zone. Actually, I've never experimented on if anybody ate those things beside me, so are you okay, Luffy? Luffy's body starts, like, inflating at random intervals, like, you know, arms turn into noodles, and then back, and just like, I feel weird, guys. No idea what would happen there, but that kind of takes us to the next level, okay? And you know what? This might sound really over the top at first, but I'm just gonna throw it out there, and I want to see if you guys, you know, where you take it, because I think if handled well with Oda's sense of humor and everything, and when we tie back into Vegapunk, because whenever Vegapunk makes a proper introduction, we're probably going to then find out about what Devil Fruits are. It might even be possible that the Straw Hats might even meet Vegapunk soon. That'd be really cool. I would really like, I mean, yeah, we could be introduced to Vegapunk before that, but I would really like the Straw Hats to at least meet the guy at some point, right? So, stage 4 of this, what if the Rumble Balls are actually a lot more important than we think they are. They're not just like, oh, this is just a little thing that Chopper created to make his arms bigger. Like, no, these are like a big deal. Like a really, really, really big deal. Like Vegapunk would see these things and he would just like lose himself. He would be like, holy crap, how did you make these? And Chopper would be like, oh, well, I did this and this in the laboratory, in Dr. Reen's laboratory on Drum Island. He's like, no, little reindeer man. He's like, my name's Chopper. Okay, Chopper, whatever. You don't understand what these things actually are. And he's like, what do you mean? I eat them and they change the wavelength. Like, no. These things are capable of artificially awakening a devil fruit. Do you know how much of a big deal that is? And Chopper, of course, would be like, what? And everyone else would be like, what? Like, are you serious with this shit? And then, like, Vegapunk's like, yeah, I've been trying to crack this nut for years. Maybe Vegapunk already did, because Vegapunk's already been stated that he understands everything about devil fruits. He knows about this. So it's not exactly impossible that maybe Vegapunk arrived at the conclusion of the Rumble Ball before Chopper did. Like, he figured it out, but he didn't tell anybody about it, because Vegapunk figured out, like, holy crap, I developed a drug that can artificially awaken a fruit. That's really dangerous for reasons I don't need to go into here. Like, the same thing I just explained later. Think about how devastating that would be if all it would take to activate an awakening to go into a rampaging monster mode is just pop three Rumble Balls into your mouth, and that's it. You could have, in theory, you could get a bunch of Zone users together, like, I don't know, on Kaido's crew or something, give them a bunch of Rumble Balls, and you would have a rampaging, near unstoppable army of Monster Point Zones crashing through town. We've saw how much devastation a single of these can do, saw how much damage that Monster Point Chopper did to Kumadori and the Tower of Law, and yeah, they do have their weaknesses, they're mindless beasts, basically, but that's just one. Imagine if you got, like, 100 Monster-pointed, Smile users or something rampaging through freaking Wano. It would be devastating. It would be like the freaking Colossal Titans from, not on that level, obviously, but they'd be like just mass destruction everywhere, rampaging beasts destroying everything, right? And apparently the only way that you could stop that is if you knocked them into the water, which would be easier said and done if there was a lot of them, or figuring out, like, get Sea Prism on them in some way, or, just waiting for it to end naturally. It doesn't last a long time, but still, that would be devastating to have as, like, an attack force. What if Vegapunk came to this conclusion, discovered how to make these things, but then never told anybody? Because it's kind of implied that Vegapunk has connections to the Revolutionary Army, and he's working kind of undercover in the world government right now. He's not actually allied with the world government entirely, so, or the world government's making him do stuff and making him create all these things that he doesn't really want to do because they're kind of, like, used to oppress the world, right? But what if it's one of those things, like, I made these things, and I thought I was the only person capable of making them, but in the back of my head, I always thought, like, oh man, what happens if somebody else comes to the conclusion and makes these things, and Chopper is that individual? We find out that, holy crap, Chopper, this entire time, since before he even joined the Straw Hats, because he's already been stated to be brilliant, he has, like, that human-level intellect, and his reindeer sensibilities. That combination together makes you basically Einstein, I guess. And, yeah, everyone just is blown away by this. Like, this is a way, way, way bigger deal than we originally assumed, okay? And you know what? This wouldn't even be the first time in One Piece where something we originally thought would, like, not be a big deal turned out to be a big deal. Like, when Chopper first is like, oh yeah, I have these Rumble Balls and I eat them and I can transform, we probably, the first time I saw that, I was like, oh yeah, that was pretty cool, he can do that, right? I didn't start thinking about all the bigger scope of what these actually would entail, right? But think about something else that, like, became a big deal in One Piece as well that we thought was just going to be a side thing at first. Wapple metal. Yeah, Wapple metal, the metal that Wapple created by accident when he was living in that refuse heap on that random island. He was just eating trash and then, using his Baku Baku abilities, popping it back out of his mouth into different combinations, into making toys for the children. And then a scientist looked at the toys and he's like, holy crap, this is a completely new alloy. This is a whole new metal altogether. It's like shape retention alloy. Where did you get this? Like, oh, a fat man puked it up at the dump and I took it. Paid 5 berries for it, actually. I'm like, all right, I need to talk to you later about that, but take me to the man that has these things, right? And so that's how Wapple became a berry billionaire, essentially, a billionaire. That's how Wapple, reclaimed his entire fortune and founded the evil Black Drum Kingdom and everything. And do you know what the freaking Frankie Shogun is made out of? Wapple metal. that blew my mind when Oda tied that back in, like, oh yeah, freaking Wapol accidentally creates a new alloy, he becomes rich, he finds his new kingdom. That's all in a cover page, the cover series that happens. And then hundreds of chapters later, we get introduced to Frankie's new weapon for the Straw Hats, the freaking badass Megazord, Frankie Shogun, and he's like, oh yeah, it's made out of Wapol metal. And of course, Frankie has no idea who Wapol is, so he's just like, oh yeah, this dude in the South Blue apparently invented it. It's this amazing new shape retention alloy. I used it to make a Megazord, So, and also Wapol came from Drum Island too, so it'd be like all this crazy stuff starts coming out of freaking Drum Island. But yeah, that would be so damn cool, right? And I think it would definitely fit with Oda's style, where the Straw Hats meet Vegapunk, and he explains like, Chopper, you don't understand. This is a groundbreaking thing that you did. And Chopper's like, oh my god, well, I mean, it was just something I cooked up one day by accident. You know how we scientist types are, right, Doc? Chopper starts acting like he's like a scientist on the level of Vegapunk or something. It's like he has the the little thing that he does. That would be so freaking crazy. But then Vegapunk might go into more detail with it. He might be like, okay, well, basically what these do is, he gives a technical explanation of what devil fruits are. This is like the big moment in the story when we find out when all this stuff's going on, when Vegapunk actually properly is introduced. Oda even confirmed this years ago. He's like, yeah, when a certain scientist is revealed in the story, we'll find out more about devil fruits. I'm sure Vegapunk will have a big exposition dump ready for us, talking about rumble balls, talking about devil fruits, talking about what artificial devil fruits, like how you make them and why he stopped production of them. He'll have a whole spiel about that, right? But he may like, okay, so what these things basically do is they force an awakening. Now that's not a good thing because you can't really control it at first. And Chopper might be like, yeah, it's really bad when you like take too many of those things, you lose yourself. It took me 2 years of training and studying on the Torino Kingdom, studying in their library on herbs to kind of maybe Chopper, here's something. Maybe Chopper modified the recipe for the Rumble Ball within the 2 years. Maybe it wasn't so much Chopper improving mentally to master Monster Point. Maybe it was like the actual recipe. But I think it would make more sense because Chopper is a doctor and he's sort of a chemist as well, making these things, making medicine and stuff as well. I think it would make more sense that he studied the medicine in Torino, all the different herbs and things, herbs and spices, and he's like, wait a second, oh wait, using this herb, I could use this as a substitute for what I used to make. Okay, hold on, let's do that. So he makes a modified recipe, still includes the cotton candy flavor, of course, includes that in the Rumble Ball, then he takes it, and because the recipe is different, he can control the wavelength better, and he doesn't lose himself when he goes Monster Point. Okay? And both of those I think would be perfectly fine. I mean, you might say that takes a little bit of weight from Chopper. Like, wait, Chopper didn't do it through willpower and training, he just did it through modifying the recipe? I'm like, well, yeah, Chopper's intelligence, that's what he does. I mean, yeah, he could turn into a big hulking dude, that's what he does also, but it's like, part of his character is like, he's a doctor, he's smart. He creates, different cures and antidotes and things. He cured freaking Queen's Plague. So it's like using his intelligence to create a upgraded form of the Rumble Ball to better control Monster Point. I think that's also something that, like, hats off to Chopper. Hold on. Yeah. Hats off to you, Chopper. There you go. You did it, okay? And so maybe Vegapunk, though, has an even better recipe for these things. And he's like, wow, you did this all on your own, basically, and you already got to this point. That's really good, Chopper. That's really good. Now, I have a better version of this, and Vegapunk takes out, like, a perfect Rumble Ball. Maybe these ones are, like, green apple flavor. I never like green apple flavor, but the best medicine is always bitter, right? So he takes out, like, the green Rumble Ball, and he's like, okay, now these bad boys are the perfect Rumble Balls, okay? And these are from years of me experimenting, and I had all this equipment and stuff and a whole staff to help me make these things. You did this on your own, so kudos. But if you're a devil fruit user and you eat one of these things, you could truly, like, go into an awakening and control that awakening. And if you train properly, you could maintain that awakening without any of the prerequisites for normally awakening your power. Like, we went over this in a whole video, like maybe it takes a long time to awaken your fruit, or you have to go through very, very specific training, you have to have it for a certain number of years. But Vegapunk being a scientist, and if Vegapunk, like, did the same thing, like if he cracked, like you know how, like, scientists, like, crack the genome of humans, like, that's a big deal. But if Vegapunk did the same thing, if he, like, cracked the genome or cracked the freaking genetic code of devil fruits, and he's like, I did it. I know everything. I could do anything I want with a devil fruit. I could put devil fruits in objects. I can remove devil fruits from you and put them in somebody else. I can make you awaken a fruit. I could do anything. But Vegapunk might be hiding a lot of this information from the government, because if he just lets everybody know, then that's a problem, okay? So he's like, yeah, this is a perfect Rumble Ball. You take this, you'll awaken your power, and there you go. And there might be still some training you'd have to do on your own, but this is a quick way to do it. And the alternative is you have to wait like 20 years. I'm bringing this up because I would really like Luffy to awaken his fruit somewhere in the story. And if that prerequisite for awakening your fruit really is, like, you have to wait, like a long time, like Doflamingo and Katakuri might have had to, because they're a lot older, they've had their devil fruits for a longer time. If that is a prerequisite, I'm not saying it is, that's just my theory, that hasn't been confirmed in the story yet, but if that is a prerequisite, Luffy would have to skirt around that. Luffy would have to have some other method of going around that to skip over that issue so he could have an awakening in the actual story. I have no doubts that if Luffy really did train for years and years, he would be able to awaken his fruit, if that really is the requirement. But I'm talking about, like, in the One Piece story right now, like when we're in after Wano and we go to the final climax of the story, apparently we're getting into right after this. There's not going to be another really big time skip in the story. If there is another time skip, it might only be a few months or something. It's not going to be like, 20 years later, Luffy finally gets the Laugh Tail. And, oh, by the way, he's also awakened the Gamu Gamu no Mi. It's not gonna be anything like that. So we might have to have a way to, like, skirt around it, and that might seem cheap, but we've been waiting on freaking Vegapunk's ass to show up in this story for so long. If Vegapunk showed up and he's like, oh yeah, I cracked the nugget on devil fruits, yeah, here, take this and train with it, it's gonna be rough and it might destroy your body from the inside out, it might take more years off your life, but here you go, if you want to awaken, here you go. And Luffy takes it and he, like, remembers Katakuri and freaking Doflamingo, and he's like, man, they were really strong. If I take this, okay. It's like when freaking Yusuke took the, Genkai's spirit orb in the Dark Tournament arc, and he's like, yeah, that wasn't a big deal. Oh, God! It might be something like that, and Luffy has to go through another trial, or he has to train with his new powers, and that's how he awakens, That might seem cheap to you, and I understand that, it's fine. But I'd be okay with that. I just want to have Vegapunk introduced finally and explain how all this works. But that's how it goes. That's how it goes. So if you made it through all those stages, if you arrived at that conclusion before me, kudos to you, because I was just thinking about the Rumble Balls today, and I remember I get comments a lot like, "Hey Tekking, you should do a video on what would happen if other Zone users eat the Rumble Ball, or what would happen if a Logia eats the Rumble Ball." And I'm thinking, well, wait a second, what even are Rumble Balls? What are these things? You understand, like, no other Devil Fruit user except for Chopper has made something like this that artificially modifies his fruit or her fruit. The only other time this has sort of happened, and it's not even the same thing, like, people will come up with weapons to, like, work together with their fruits, like weapons that specifically are catered to their abilities and stuff like that, but nothing like a drug that actually modifies you from the inside out. Except Caesar. Caesar's kind of did that when he made the Shinokuni, the Death Country gas, and he absorbed that using his own gas powers, and he made that giant hulking image with, like, that's like powered up Caesar, like Ultimate Caesar, like Shinokuni Caesar. Like, that was sort of like he made the Shinokuni gas, and then he combined that with his own Logia gas to make himself stronger, okay? But still, that was slightly different, because that wasn't like he made a drug that allowed him to freely control his body or anything like that. That was more of just him combining with another thing. It was sort of similar, like, imagine Crocodile. If Crocodile whipped up a giant sandstorm, and then Crocodile merged with the sandstorm, and so you had, like, a giant sandstorm over the town, and, like, Crocodile's face was in the storm, and he's like, ha 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 ha. It would be something like that. Like he made, like, giant sand arm, like he came out and tried to grab, like Crocodile was like the size of a skyscraper in the storm or something like that. That's more of like what that was, rather than actually making something like freaking Chopper did, okay? So let me know in the comments below how you feel about Chopper's balls. I am looking forward to reading those. This will be Tekking, signing out. Later, everybody. Chopper's a genius. He's a mad genius.